Okay, so today on the show, I have Anthony Ashby. He's the CEO and co-founder of the Whole Man Academy. In 2016, Anthony left a 20-year career working as a trader and broker in the City of London to go off in search of a life with more fulfillment and impact. The journey of self-improvement and personal discovery led him to specialize in coaching men to master their mindset at work and play and live an outstanding lifestyle. In 2018, he co-founded the Whole Man Academy alongside BBC News editor Matthew Shaw. The Whole Man Academy is a fresh new initiative designed to get men talking. It's like a living, breathing magazine for men. It's set up to help men do life better and get their priorities sorted. In April 2020, the WMA welcomed style icon David Gandy, one of the most influential men on the planet, as its first global ambassador. The Whole Man Academy connects with men through live and online events, a popular weekly podcast, weekly newsletters, social media, and online courses. Anthony is also the host of the Whole Man Academy podcast, a series of interviews with inspiring men and women from all walks of life. Stories and strategies empower listeners to cope with the stresses of modern life and better men. With a great team around him, Anthony is intent on growing the Whole Man Academy to reach more men and help them become more resilient, confident, and to do life better. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Joel. Lovely introduction.
It is indeed. I tell you, there's a 10 in there I want to dive into straight away, Anthony. But we won't do that straight off. I want to say to you, first of all, what's going on in the world right now, in your world?
Good question. Yeah, I guess like for a lot of the people, the world has been flipped upside down for us. And what we thought was the normal life has halted for the moment. So I am up in the Cotswolds. I'm very lucky to have moved out of London a couple of years ago. And it means that we've got a fairly decent sized garden. And considering we've got two little kids who've got a lot of energy, it's a priceless thing to have, a bit of space around you. And living in the country actually means that not a lot has changed because it was quiet anyway. So you don't notice a lot of difference in that. The cars are slightly less going past, but still it's very quiet. So it's just a case of riding this out until we can actually pop our heads, out of the hole and carry on with normal life.
Yeah, absolutely, I hear you there. I mean, a garden is a savior. We're lucky enough. We were in rental and we've got a garden of sorts. So I can't imagine what it'd be like to be in a flat. That would not be good right now.
I think that's the thing is, it's hard enough for people that are lucky to have a garden and some outside space. And probably like yourself, I know enough people that are living in, either cities but for us, especially London, who are living in, even if you've got a lovely apartment or if it's a flat, if you've got no outside space, you're forced to take your one form of exercise a day, which is great. But just being able to open the doors and get outside for a while is, for all of us, for our physical and mental health is very important at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I know that's two of the things I've struggled with most in my life is, my mental health, and that was one of the instrumental parts of it, was getting outside and getting that movement going. So, okay, let's dig a little bit into this bio because you've got me intrigued. So, trader broker, how did you end up on that path?
Good question. I had zero plan of what I was going to do with my life, which I think is something that I maybe could have benefited from. And I ended up working in the city just because, or especially for one of the biggest kind of commodity trading companies in the world, because I just wanted a job in London. And I started there as a little pup, as a desk junior with absolutely no idea what I was doing. And on my first day at work, I turned up and didn't even know the name of the person that was employing me. So that was a positive start. Thankfully, I actually started learning something, and that led me through a couple of really big companies and ended up working primarily for a company called GFI, which was based in the city in Liverpool Street, and working as a broker there on a carbon emissions market. I also moved to fuel oil broking and then shipping, or LPG shipping derivatives. So it was a real mixture, and I don't always pretend I knew exactly what I was doing, but I was a good people person.
I think that's a key part of any personal communication, is being able to be good with people. Going back to something you said there, you said you had no goals or no sight of where you wanted to go. When you think back, why do you think there was a lack of goal around where you wanted to go at that young age? I'm guessing you're talking 16, 17.
Yeah, I mean, I did my A levels, and I thought I wanted to go to university only really because that's called procrastination for a lot of people, and you don't know what you want to do, so your natural progression is to go to uni. But actually, I wanted to study radio, film, television. I knew there was one thing I wanted to do, but that didn't happen, and I went straight to work up in London. But I just don't think at school we weren't taught that. You had a very brief back then, whether it's changed now, but a brief bit of careers guidance advice, which was absolutely rubbish, and you were just let out into the big wide world. So at no point did anybody ever say, you know, what are you interested in? What would you like to do? And there's always that question of, you know, if you had your time again, I certainly wouldn't have gone and done what I did, much as, you know, it brought me to where I am now. I think I would have actually got into some kind of like sports journalism or something that I actually found fairly interesting.
When you did it, you just brought something back to mind then. When I think it was 14 or 15, they had counsellors come into the school, like career counsellors, and they had like this, I think it must be it was a sheet of paper with a ton of boxes on it. Sorry, Anthony. That's my wife's phone.
It might be for me.
Can't have it. Okay.
Let's remind people that we've adapted because we're both recording our podcast from home. And,
we are indeed.
Yeah, and these things happen. And the other day I was recording one, and our neighbour is next door, and you know they decided they were doing some chainsawing, and I'm just sitting here, and like, what can you do? You know, so you just smile and carry on.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah. And a house full of kids as well.
Yeah.
I've had to get my boy to turn his volume down because he's on the Xbox. He's getting all like flustered and stuff, you know.
I was going to say, how do you turn the child's volume down?
Threatened to take it off him, so that was the option.
You can make a lot of money if you can work out how to turn a child's volume down at the moment.
Indeed. Okay, I digress. Let's go back. So when I was in school, we had these forms we had to fill in, and we had to, you know, like the lottery ticket, and you got to rub it so that it's strong enough to process when you put it through the machine. And that's what we had to fill in. There's like, I don't know, thousands of questions. Felt like thousands. Did you have anything like that, or did you have somebody come in and sit down with you?
Yeah, we did. We didn't have any scratch and sniff stuff like you did, but I remember we took some kind of, you know, mind mapping course, a bit like a disc profiling for kids or something. Okay. And I'm sure I've actually still got it. You know, one of those boxes where you've got stuff that you think is useful, even though you just keep it locked in the garage. And I'm sure with that, it was very much you like talking, and you like communicating, and you like being creative. And you know, my strong points weren't maths and science. Science was very boring to me, which is comedy that I went into the financial markets when I had no interest in maths.
Okay, that's cool. So with that in mind now, do you have anything in place for, I know you've got young children. I don't know how old they are.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important question. And I was speaking on a podcast the other day to a chap who's a real entrepreneurial mastermind, as we dubbed him. And, you know, he spoke and I spoke about, both of us have got children under, I mean, mine are only 3 and 7 months. So we've got quite a few years to plan ahead. But, you know, from a young age, it's helping a child maybe understand their relationship with money and the relationship with your, let's call it your dad going to work, you know, not saying, oh, I've got to go to work. Oh, it's like, hey, I'm going to work. I'm going to do some really cool stuff, so that they grow up wanting to do work. Now, it doesn't mean they have to work for someone else, but, you know, we think it's important to educate your child as you come up. And for us, I mean, my partner's into nutrition. I mean, she's a nutritionist, but she's into the kind of the proper depths of nutrition and how it can impact you from a young age, but also about personal development. And, you know, we do feel that, let's say for myself, I didn't read a personal development book like a Tony Robbins or Brian Tracy's Goals until I was like 35. I mean, you know, there's at least 15 or 20 years that I could have been doing some cool shit, but I didn't, because I was unenlightened. So maybe as they get older, just encouraging them to just read things that aren't the norm for kids growing up.
I like that frame that you said about angle the work. It's just going to bring me on to another point that I want to touch on later on. So something else you mentioned in the bio was the fact that, you know, this Whole Man Academy came about through a desire to reach men and for them to become more resilient, more confident, so they can do life better. From what I'm seeing, this is much needed. From my own perspective, I can certainly rate the non-resilience and the lack of confidence. Where do you think that is? Where do you think that comes from men, and why do you think there's such a need for this right now?
Yeah, I think that there's different schools of thought here, but for me, I can only ever talk about for me personally and all the guys that we talk with through the Whole Man Academy. And of course, a lot of it comes from as we're growing up. I mean, it sounds boring to go to it, but we're told to man up, and not big boys don't cry, etc., etc. And it's funny because you're trying to find a balance there between, there's the possibility that as we're growing up, when things aren't going right for us, or when you're having a challenging time, keeping it locked up, isn't going to be helpful. Now, that's not to say that, you need to be posting on social media every time you've had a bad day and being upset by it. If you want to, great. But it's about knowing that actually it's okay to not have a great day. And what we're trying to do is help a guy understand that, especially as you grow up. I'll give you a good example. When we ran one of our first events, we had in London, we had maybe 25 guys in the room, and the age spread was from a guy who was 18 right up to a guy who was in his 60s. Towards the end, we said, would anyone just like to, comment on how the day has gone? And the 18-year-old stood up, which was quite brave of him, I thought. And he said, it's good to know that you older guys have problems too, because I thought it was just us, people my age. And the guy who was 60 leant over and he said, listen, I'm old enough to be your granddad and I'm still having challenges, but the more I'm okay with, admitting that things aren't always perfect is my path to actually, being a bit more fulfilled.
That's nice. I think that's so true. It's, I try and be open with my, all of my children, really, not just my son, but I want my son in particular, my eldest son, to understand I go through stuff. Not for him to be like the bouncing board, but for him to see, actually, that's processing now, right now, or obviously he's struggling or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see that with my dad. My dad's old school. Shove it deep down inside into that black hole, and you keep it there.
And isn't that a generational thing?
Absolutely, I think so.
Going through the war, not that out. My dad. I don't know how old your dad. Let's say. So my dad being in his 60s, but obviously he didn't go through the war. But for their fathers that were dealing with, some really tough times, there was no, let's have a chat about it and share our stuff on our Instagram stories. It was just shut up and get on with it. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, ultimately that doesn't help long term.
No, it doesn't. I did it for so long. And eventually that manifested in like breakdown of sorts for me, and physical illness, because I was trying to be. I always look at, I still emulate my father now. His aspects of him, I want to be like. The biggest one I struggle with is this, being able to just suck it up, man, and get on with it. I can do that, but sometimes you need to process the feelings that come out on the way. Yeah. And you need to allow yourself to have those feelings so you can move to the next part, which is a little bit easier once you haven't suppressed those feelings. I know for me, when I was in working my job, my previous role, there was strong characters in the room, and I had to suppress who I was because I didn't want to be the person shaking the room. I didn't want to upset the boat, all those sorts of things, and it wasn't until I actually put that to bed that the cluster migraines that manifested for me, that's what they manifested as.
Yeah.
It went away. I actually needed to deal with that confrontation and just they dissipated, which is it's crazy to think if you suppress an emotion, it can have a physical outcome.
Yeah. But as you say, bottling it up, and at some point it will overflow.
Or
explode.
Or explode. And that's how I felt. So I was going, this is why your bio resonates so much with me, because I was that person that went to work smiling. and then come home fuming.
Yeah.
I bottled it all up to the day. You know, I was a nice, happy guy in work. Got on with everybody, like, you know, same people person. Listened to other people's problems. Wasn't content in my role. And then I would just leach out then when I was at home. And it was snappiness, shouting, or stupid stuff triggering you. So you're reacting to the kids.
Yeah.
But, you know, and that took that was a long process. And then it wasn't until eventually I looked and I thought, I'm going to lose my wife and I'm going to lose my kids. I need to do something. I mean, something needs to change. So this leads to another question I want to ask you. So you obviously reached a point in your life where you decided, actually, I'm done with this. I need something else. You would become aware of fulfillment. How did that manifest the bit before you asked yourself, what else can I do? How did that look for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd spent, let's say, nigh on 20 years in the city, and probably about, let's say, 80% of it I'd really enjoyed, but it was quite a toxic environment, and you know, you were judged on how much money you made. I mean, that's the nature of the job. Guess what? You're there to make money. But I just found that after a while, firstly, you know, you were such a roller coaster. It'd be like being a footballer in the fact that, you know, you could have a terrible game, but if you scored a goal in the last minute, then, you know, suddenly you were the hero. But if that little instance didn't happen and you lost, then you go home and you're, you know, I say depressed, but you're pissed off, and people are wanting answers. And you know, using that sport analogy is the same as the financial side. You know, you could be just a split second, or you're not even in control of making money, because it might be your client saying to you, look, I need to do this deal, and he tells you he wants to buy or sell something. You know who wants to sell it, so you speak to him, and I mean literally a 30-second conversation. Yep, that's done, and you might make 10-20 grand. Now on that day, you're king of the world, and you've got you know, you're all very happy and everything's good, and you're cock of the hoop. But the next day, that same deal is out there, and your client gives that to your competitor, who happens to be one of your friends or something as well. So that day, you're all moaning at each other on the desk because you've just missed out on 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 grand, and they've got it. So Monday, you were a hero, and on Tuesday, you were zero, and then Wednesday, you were a hero. So you can see the pattern. And you know, then you'd have the long hours as well. I mean, I got up at 5:30 every morning, got into your desk where you were in by 6:45 in London, and people thought, oh, you must finish at like early afternoon, and you're like, no, you'd finish at, you know, the earliest was 5 o'clock, but several nights sometimes then you'd go out with clients, and it'd be up to you to entertain them, pay for them, stay out all night until 3 a.m, and then get back up at 5:30 and go back to work and carry it on again. So it was, yeah, it was good, and for a while. But like anything, you know, like any relationship or a career, at some point your priorities change. And I just got to that stage here. I was like, do you know what? The market that I was working was starting to disintegrate, and by that I mean computers were taking over. So, you know, the computer could do it quicker than you, more efficiently, cheaper, you know, et cetera, all the benefits. And we weren't really needed. And I could see this even 2 years before I actually left that desk, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And it was around that time, the realization that I would come home and be pissed off, which is very unlike me.
Is that coming home to family then, or fiance, or?
Just to Emma, who's my fiance. And it all kind of, it's not meant to sound dramatic, but again, I've always hopefully prided myself on being a fairly level-headed and a kind and a friendly person. But I remember coming home at one point, and Emma said, I mean, Emma worked in the same industry, but she was home before me at that point. And she said, you know, how was your day? And I walked in, and I was, like you say, I was so stressed after having that kind of environment all the time, where that day you'd probably completely, like, you'd made nothing, and then your competitors had. But I came home and actually said to her, like, I'll fucking tell you when I've had a good day. And then I like went upstairs and found myself like bursting into tears. And you're like, what am I doing? Like, I'm a mildly emotional person, but I'd never felt like that. And it was not, I don't mean to say that I was having a breakdown. It was just like an instant reaction where you think, God, this can't be good for you. And it was around that time that I'd started to think, okay, well, what else can I do? Which is tough because you're earning pretty good money where you were, and I'd always thought that if I got to six figures in earnings that everything would be great, and then when I got to that, you just needed more.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay.
It was never going to be enough.
No. Do you think you were at the irrespective of the lifestyle he was giving you, do you think you were in a place of comfort in yourself, like inside?
No, it was that realization that, I mean, it's funny, at that time I started listening to podcasts, and I've said before, podcasts saved my life. Now, it sounds dramatic, but it was, again, Emma had said to me, oh, you ought to listen to podcasts. I was like, I'm not listening to podcasts, I'm too busy. Don't be silly. And guess what? Turns out that females are right sometimes, and which you'd be pleased to hear, I admit. But yeah, I mean, I literally started listening to certainly one or two podcasts, and actually I'm now friends with the guy who's based out in I think he's in the States, actually. He's always moving around. But that got me into listening to things about Tony Robbins, and then going to Tony Robbins events, and from there one other podcast being London Real. And I started developing my own skills as a person and understanding more about personal development, and that's what took me on that journey to the Tony Robbins events in Miami and Tenerife and here and there.
So that must have been a bit of a bold move to actually make that transition. What sort of steps did you put in place to navigate or make that a little bit easier for yourself, or was it just a piece of I'm done?
No, you're right. I mean, I spoke on a podcast from the chap in South Africa yesterday about this, the importance of understanding. Firstly, it depends, because everybody's different. I was firstly lucky that I had a fair amount of money in my bank account, so you can be a lot more blasé about things if you want. Secondly, I managed to get made redundant, which of course is one of those very useful things when you get another X amount of money deposited into your bank account. So for me, I was able to literally take 6 months off work with zero income and carry on kind of learning and working out what I was actually going to do. But of course, for people that don't have that luxury, it's important, I think, to, let's call it a side hustle. If you want to make a change, if you hate your job so much you need to leave, then and it's going to affect you so badly you think your brain's going to explode, then probably you should have a word with your boss immediately. But if you can say, do you know what, I don't like doing this, but it's okay, but I want to do something different, that's the time to think, right, it's hard work, but guess what, I'll work during the day on what I'm doing, and in the evenings and weekends I'll work on what I really want to do until I can make that transition.
That's cool, because I was reading something the other day, and I can't remember what book it was, but it was the book. They were saying about that, the working on your passion, eventually, like say like your 8-hour work day and your 2-hour passion, eventually then that sort of transitions across where you're then 8 hours passion, 2 hours work, or whatever, whatever that may be. So yeah, it's I just think I got many people I know, people that can be in jobs sometimes, and there's a need to go to work to pay the mortgage, pay the bills.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the shift didn't come until I was able to say, I'm not happy. What can I do about it? And that sentence alone is what kicked it all off. And for me, I'm the same. It was podcasts.
Yeah.
That's what started me on podcasts, and which led to books, which led to more podcasts and masterminds and all sorts of different things. So no, I feel you on that.
And it's a free resource as well. If you think, even with books, I mean, generally, if you really want a book, you can find it. But I mean, a podcast is so easily accessible. And I always say now, either pick a podcast or pick a person and follow them and consume everything that they suggest. Don't jump from one to the next to the next to the next, because it's like doing courses. You'll do 6 different courses and spend money and time and effort, but you're kind of procrastinating actually pulling the trigger and doing something that you need to do. So it's, I mean, Tony Robbins is a great example. If you said now, if you took a guy that didn't know what he wanted to do, and irrespective of whether he's got money in the account or not, if you said to me, Joe, what, let's look at this as a long game. For 6 months, I'm going to consume all the content that he has, is free online. You don't even need to go to his actual events, which are expensive. And then see where you are in 6 months' time. You'll be a totally different person if you implement 10% of what you would learn. But often people read that book or podcast as entertainment.
Yeah.
And like, wow, that was great. Anyway, back to my life.
Yeah, people can tend to use like motivational to send the GM up for the now, without realizing that if they fail to address their current state, the way they feel right now, and meaningfully address it so that they are then able to change the way they feel. If they're pissed off, do something about it. If you're happy, remember it, harness it, and then use it as a resource. All these different things are things that you can learn and utilize as you go on, as you well know. So yeah, I mean, I think Dan
Joel, most people won't, and do you know why? Because it's hard work.
I think it's making the time. When I think back to my journey, it was all revolving around telly, chilling. Do you know what I mean? It was purposeless.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you on your journey. Have you, when purpose kicks in and you realize, actually, I'm not messing about, I've got to do this. Like I had a wobble, must have been a couple of weeks ago. And I felt like I just wanted to as if I was a Dan Pina, right? My wife's got him on all the time at the moment. And he gives this analogy of like a turtle in a shell. And the only time he makes progress is when he sticks his head out.
Yeah.
I had a wobble where I thought, I just want to put my head back in that shell. Something in me was like, you do that.
Yeah.
You're going backwards. What are you doing? But then it was a case of, okay, owning it, Jocko Willink. And then just thinking, I can't be that person anymore. I've got to own where I want to go. I think a lot of people can sometimes get waylaid. So what have you seen? I mean, you coach men. What's your take on men when they come to you? Do you find they're of a certain level, or do you find they're of a certain mindset when they come to you?
I think you've summed it up nicely. A lot of people, especially guys. I mean, again, we can talk about the male female kind of split and how it works, but generally, we're for the Whole Man Academy, the clue is in the name. We're focusing on the men, and for a lot of them, once you kind of got into a career, you start to get comfortable, which is fine. I mean, it's brilliant if you can get into a career and you enjoy it and you're comfortable for the rest of your life. Then that's quite frankly the golden egg. It's often for guys when they get to that either a 10-year career or that kind of age where maybe kids have left home or something's changing, where you start to get a bit bored, and you think there must be. It sounds corny, but there must be more to life than this. And I know enough guys still work in the city, maybe sitting at the same desk they've been at for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, who haven't liked it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But as you said, what else do you do? It's difficult. And here's the other thing. If you're a single man, it's easier because no one else is counting on you. But you go home to your wife and your children, especially if your wife has got the kids at private school and is driving a Mercedes and has got a nice house. Now that it can doesn't have to be all those silly trappings, but you see my point there. You go home to her and say, darling, I'm feeling unfulfilled. I think I'm going to jack in my job that I earn 100 to 200 whatever thousand a year, and I'm going to pursue my passion. And you see how that goes down. So it is tough for guys, and what you need there is to be fully in tune with your family and understand that maybe if you're going down that route where you're leaving your job and the money's going to change from a 6-figure salary, maybe down to 25,000 for a while, whatever it is, that it's going to be tough for a while, and you have to make some sacrifices.
Is there any part of that story that you implemented?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, going back to, we used to spend a lot of money. We'd go to, we went to Miami on holiday, and you'd spend like 10 grand on a holiday for like 6 days out there. And, we had nice cars, and not long before I left the city, I walked into BMW showroom and bought a brand new BMW Z4 convertible. And, drove it around, and then after a while realized that it gave you more stress because wherever you left it, you were worried about it. And, you know, it's not a Ferrari, but for me, it was an expensive car. So we cut back on all that stuff. And I was very lucky that my partner was very supportive, and we knew that sometimes you've got to go backwards to go forwards.
That has been a key part for me too, in my own journey. Not so much the Z4, more a Galaxy Force, but we I needed to make that shift. I was lost, bored, and a ton of other things, which manifested in different ways. But I needed to once I got onto that growth mindset and just realizing things didn't have to stay the way they were.
Yeah.
I then became more curious about, okay, what else can I change? What else can I do? And then, like you said about having a supportive wife, that transition for me from my previous role to my current role required a drop in money. And I had to sit everybody down and tell them it required a drop in money. Yeah. There might be some hardships. The odd thing is, a lot of people, when I left that role, they were all like, oh, what are you doing? You know, there's this and it's that and da-da-da. And I'm just like, yeah, I'll go for a year and see what happens. And it's the best thing I've ever done. Because what it made me do, became very, very conscious where my money was going. Going back to what you said originally, which is teaching your kids about money, I think this is the most important lesson they'll ever have, is being intentional with it. And going back to what you just said about a couple of minutes ago, you just said about trappings. And this is something we're discussing with our children. I want them to be aware that they can do anything they want. But for them to go and buy the latest car, a new house just off the bat, put themselves in a position where they need them to go do a job, it doesn't terrify me, but it upsets me to think they could be in a position that I was in.
Yeah.
You know, so your early doors with your children, do you think, we said like growth mindset and stuff, do you think you'll put something in place to navigate that, or have you already had the conversation with your wife about jobs versus pursuing passion and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about the bringing up of the kids and how we would navigate it for them, I think firstly it's about understanding that, you know, most children are brought up to be an employee, and which can be great. Again, for some people, if you want to just carry on in your job, and it's really it's fantastic if you can work for a great company and get well paid and you love it, then that's fantastic. Some people get to that stage where, I remember, I think I was, say, maybe 35, and I wanted to take some time off on holiday. And of course I had to ask permission because, and understandably so, you work on a desk of people, and if you can't all be off at the same time. And it might sound pathetic, but I remember saying, can I have, you know, whatever time off? And they said no, because, you know, that person's off. And I was like, I'm 35 years old and I have to, you know, and I've got a Z4 and I've got this and this and what have you, and I earn this money. And I have to ask permission if I can go on holiday. Like, that doesn't sit well with me. And it never really had before, but that was one of those little moments. You're like, hold on a minute. My friends that own their companies or work for themselves, they don't do that. Now, working for yourself can be really challenging, especially when you start out. And some people aren't cut out for it, and they should stay in employment. You know, you get good benefits, the money goes in your account. Some days you can sit and do nothing all day, relatively, and, you know, if you're off sick, you're still going to get paid for it. But understanding when our children grow up that you haven't got to be an employee, and that maybe you could start trying to set up your own little business. And of course, for you and I, we're not 20 years old anymore, so we didn't have the ability to use YouTube or eBay or all these different things to become a little mini entrepreneur. Whereas by the time my kids are, you know, 15, you know, we'll be 20, 35 by then. I mean, God knows where we'll be with 5G. Will have probably killed us all by then and fried us anyway, but that's another story. But, you know, how about saying, look, you know, we want you to try something, try and create some revenue and do some good. And if it doesn't work out, we'll try something else.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's a difficult thing to navigate. You're right. I get some people are cut out for employment. Do you think there's and he's like, imagine somebody that's listening to this now and they're like, oh, yeah, but I got commitments and I've got this and I've got. How would you help them make that decision between like, do I stay put? Do I, dip my toe in it? What do I do? What would you say to that person?
Firstly, that's into two what's the word I'm looking for? Let's say two folders. One is the person that knows what they want to do, and one is the person that doesn't know what they want to do. If you know what you want to do, go and sniff out and investigate what are the good and the bad things about that new career. Because often people see, I'll start my business, it'll be great, I can work for myself. And you're like, okay, well, you don't become, you're now your accountant, your marketing, your IT, your, all the different things. It's difficult. So go and find out whatever that career is or business that you think you want to go into. And maybe for as long as you can bear it, go and find someone that's where you want to be and shadow them, ask to be mentored by them, work for them on the weekends and see what it's really all about. Because the worst thing I think is if you leave your job and then you go to do something else and realize the grass isn't greener. If you're someone that doesn't know what you want to do, it's important to, I think most people deep down would know what they want to do. Maybe it's you take the things that you're interested in, the things you talk most about with your friends, the things that wouldn't seem like work if you were staying up late to deal with them. And there's always something around that you can find that is it hasn't got to be your passion, but something you're at least interested in. But if you don't know what you want to do, then at some point you've got to do something. So you can either stay where you are, which is fine, but if it gets too painful to do that, then do something and be prepared that if you do it and it doesn't work, you're going to expand your network, you're going to learn a lot, and maybe whilst you're doing that, something else will become clear to you.
Yeah, and that leads right into the growth mindset aspect. Do you think you went through life with a growth mindset or a fixed one? Or do you think there was an inflection point?
I went through life with various mindsets. One was girls, and then when I got to 35, well, girls and football, and that was it. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. And stick with what you're good at. But at around that mid-30s, again, I just had my, I don't know, I just maybe I became enlightened, or maybe I grew up a little bit.
Yeah, that's something else as well. It's they took me back then saying that, because there was, when I first sat down to see the person that helped me on my journey, he asked me what was I proud of, and I couldn't tell him. And I was 41 years old. And then asked me something about what was I happy about, and I couldn't tell him. Everything he asked me, I wasn't able to verbalize, which concerned me to a degree,
Yeah.
But yeah, that growing up part seemed to kick in for me when I was able to understand where I was, who I was, what I enjoyed. So therefore, it meant I could put some of the other more childish aspects of myself to one side and say, actually, that's not really serving me right now.
Yeah.
That's not leading me where I want to go. So
I think on our pre-questions you asked about, maybe it was about a book that I might either recommend, and it's interesting. I mean, I get asked that question quite a bit, and there's obviously loads of great books, but someone says, if you just had to pick one, it depends on who you are and what your circumstances are. But it's interesting, the book by Brian Tracy called Goals, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. It's so funny because just like you said, when you got asked those questions, when I bought that book, and the simplest things you should be able to report about yourself. You know yourself, no one else knows like you. And if someone's like, what are your goals? To not even be able to think beyond, I want to go on holiday in July, and not maybe get a nicer car or something like that. Interesting that as yourself, like I found, I couldn't honestly sit there and put many goals down.
It was a struggle.
Yeah.
It was an absolute struggle. And we had some, a lot of the questions he asked me were NLP based anyway, but it was like being able to put that into a positive context. I've told this before on your he asked me, what do I want? And I told him for 20 minutes everything I didn't want.
Yeah.
So he asked me again. He said, right. He said, you just said everything in the negative. Explained what he meant. He said, right, tell me what you want. And I tried then, positive. And I slipped back into, I don't want this, and I don't want to be doing that, and I don't want to be doing this. And he let me run for another 5 minutes, went, you're doing it again.
And you're like, keep going.
Unbelievable. But it's like, how the hell do you, like, how the hell do you get to 41 years old, right? And somebody asks you, what do you want? And you don't know.
Yeah. You know, you don't want, you know what you don't want, but you don't know what you do want.
Yeah. It's like, that just cooks my head, you know, it cooks my head, the fact I got to 41 and I had no awareness.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. But going back to goals, so something we're struggling with at the moment, and I had massive clarity last night after reflecting on my day, was, so a friend recommended to me something called 75 Hard. Have you heard of that?
Nope.
So Andy Frizella, MFCEO project, he's a good podcast, quite street talking, loads of swearing. So if your ears are fragile, don't listen to it.
Yeah.
But this thing about 75 Hard, and it's about creating habits. And then 75 Hard, and then three big things you want to achieve for the next day, which leads into the goals thing he was saying. And so I set my goals in order of my values. So I thought, I'll go, health is my first, family is second, business is third. So my health was up first thing, meditate, affirmations, and then I went on a bike ride this morning.
Yeah.
That's my health done, happy days. And I'm going to chuck another weight session later on today. Family. I skipped family, went straight to business because I knew straight away what I had to do, which was my London Real stuff and some other bits and bobs. I went back to family. I thought, bloody hell, I've been so frustrated lately with this current environment we're in. I'm home. I'm still plodding, knocking stuff out for the podcast and what have you. Mrs. is working on her business. We're working on a group venture as well together, me and the wife. I'm seeing my kids gaming and doing their thing, which is fine. But it's not the lifestyle I envisage for us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I want to, I know we can't at the moment. I envisage to be like climbing, surfing, going out on a picnic somewhere, going for a nice walk, just going, being down the beach, just being together. And I realized then quite starkly, I've got no family goals. It's like being there or being present. It's not specific enough. Do you set goals around family and stuff like that, or how do you manage it?
I'll tell you what's funny about that. Most people don't, because they wouldn't see the value in it. And we don't as a family, only because our little ones are so tiny that they, you know, one of them's too busy wiping food around his face to do anything else. But I have personally, and it's funny, talk about goals. 3 years ago, I looked back at what I'd written 3 years ago, and it's surprising sometimes then how you've realized things you had on that list you've done without celebrating. And it's those little things. And for us, actually, you just hit on it. Working from home at the moment is challenge. It's great and it's not great. You know, there's of course, like anything, you know, water can kill you, but you need it to survive. Working from home is brilliant. You don't have to commute and you can go and see the family. But, you know, last night when I'm on a live call and my little boy happens to come in the room after he's had his bath, you know, I didn't care, but you could be on something really important and it could create stress for you. But for me, it was about saying, right, well, with family goals, even in the short term, do I block out one? I'm trying to maintain the normal working hours, and let's say 8 till 5 with some time for lunch. But how do I block out some time that I actually spend with the family so that it's not just all work and not just spending time with them, but trying to do something that's slightly different to normal? So most people wouldn't bother with family goals, but actually, because they're quite hard to set. Like they don't just, you know, in your career, it's easy, isn't it? I want to earn this much. I want to get this promotion. I want to launch this product. I want this many followers, blah, blah, blah. Talk to me about family goals. I want to, and it suddenly comes down to time or destination. You know, I want to go on holiday with them, or I want to spend X amount with them. But that's, the book goals can be applied not just to you, but, you know, a lot of it can be applied to your, as you say, your family as well. But most people wouldn't bother to do it anyway.
So we block off Sunday mornings until about 3 o'clock, and Wednesdays all day. With the intention of just being present, not working on business and stuff. But then even putting that into the context of the week, that's only 2 out of 7 days. So therefore, in my head, I'm not prioritizing my family in the way that I prioritize my health, because my health is a daily thing, as is my business. So yeah, it's something I'm going to continue to play with. And you're right, it does come down to time. Then I was like, is it the amount of time I'm available for them, or is it the amount of quality time I interact with them?
Yeah.
Because I got different scenarios. I got my 7-year-old who he can stick me for so long, just playing games or doing jigsaws.
Yeah.
But he likes his own space. He's, I think he's on the spectrum with regards to like ADHD and stuff. So,
but Joel, it comes down to also your own situation. Let's say that you have a thriving business and it's kind of taking care of itself, and you check in and out and you do a couple of hours a day, which I know people that obviously have that, and it's nice. You can then say, well, my priority is my health and my family. But if you're someone that is struggling to pay the bills because business isn't going very well, but you're having some lovely time playing Lego with the boys, you need to check your priorities, because if you want to continue to pay the bills, then playing Lego with the boys ain't going to cut it. So it always comes down to what is your personal situation. I say I've got friends that own businesses that play golf twice a week because they can afford to do that, and that's good for their health and maybe their partner. But if their business, I know in an instant, if their business was in trouble, that will have to take a back seat for a while. And health needs to be maintained and family needs to be maintained, but sometimes one's up, sometimes one's down.
Yeah, I read that somewhere else as well, and they talk about like a seasonality to life, where there's those different seasons, and I've sort of been applying that. There's times when I can spend more time and everyone's in the right frame of mind, because teenagers are not always in the frame of mind to spend time with you.
Yeah.
And they like their own space as well. So try not to impinge on their life or try and restrict their own personal sense of being, by putting my expectations of what family life looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm very much aware of that. So yeah, that's something I'm playing with at the moment.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because who's to say, just because that's your vision of what the perfect family life is. I mean, this is the challenge with having friends that have got teenagers, is that they're adults now, and their version of a perfect life isn't what yours is. And rightly or wrongly, most of us, you try and push your children into living what you consider the perfect life because your values, which is perfectly natural. But yeah, you get to that stage, that's where the resistance happens between teenagers, when you're saying, well, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to spend family time together, and they're like, I don't want to do family time, I just want to play on my PlayStation or what have you. But this is why this conversation is good, because it's a good example of, with the Whole Man Academy, when we first started out, it was mildly dubbed as just mental health for men, which I understand why it was, because we probably used that as part of our tagline. But we realized that mental health is just a spoke on a wheel of life for a man, and your health and your business and your career and your relationships and your sex life and your fitness, which is different to health, are all very important. And sometimes one is up, one is down. But if you let one of them fall off completely, if you say, oh, I've got great mental health and I'm really fit, but my business is fucked and I've got no money, well, maybe that doesn't matter to some people, but suddenly the alarm bells are ringing. Or if you say, I've got an amazing business, I earn loads of money, my mental health is great, and my sex life is great, and what have you, but my health is terrible, and I'm now in hospital with stress and what have you. Guess what? We need to address that.
Yeah.
And that's where we see it. It's each little segment of that is like a slice of man pie, for want of a better phrase.
I like that, man. Yeah.
They're all just as important. Sometimes some are up and sometimes some are down.
Yeah, that's just why. Like I said to you, I connected you with you at the very early point, because I resonated so much with what you're doing. So yeah, I want to be respectful of your time as well. So I think we'll wrap him up there, Anthony. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for your perspectives, and thank you for initiating the Whole Man Academy. Because I think there's a lot of men out there that are going to need this, and I'd be more than willing to share your message and engage as you go forward. So thank you very much.
I appreciate it, and thank you for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure to talk man stuff and without a filter.
Thank you, Andy.